Hey, I have a surprise for you. Are you ready? Hi, it's Savannah, and this is The Hearty Life. How cool did that sound? I mean, I don't, not to brag or anything, but I made that myself. So if you ever believe that you can't do anything, look at the girl who used to play recorder in primary school and was often asked to leave the class because I couldn't hold a note and kept like falling out the bottom. So look, compare me from there and look at me now. I'm really happy you're here with me on this week's episode, and I just want to talk about people pleasing and people fixing or fixing in general, because I feel like this is like so close to my heart and it's something I've really been working on in the long run. And I also wanted to share some of the best advice I'd ever received as a people pleaser and a people fixer and a problem fixer. And I really try and take this advice with me wherever I go and try and apply it to everyday life in every kind of situation. And I hope that it helps you too. So stay tuned. Let's find out. I've spent a lot of my life bending over backwards for people, and I've always been a big giver. It's one of my biggest strengths, and if not managed well, it is also one of my biggest weaknesses. And I've spent like many years just being a people pleaser and consistently avoiding conflict and not speaking up about how I felt because I didn't want to cause any problems or upset anyone. And this led me to being in situations where I was bullied, I was taken advantage of. I was just self-abandoning. I wasn't looking after my own needs and I was becoming quite resentful and depressed, and it's not good for me. I can't show up and be the best version of myself if I'm constantly in that kind of state, you know? But then I also want to talk about the fixer in me. So if you have a problem, I'm your girl. I drop things for people. I would go out of my way to help people. I often put so much more time, energy into my work. Like you need someone to pick up a friend, I'm your girl. You need some help moving? Don't worry, I'm there. Do you need someone to stay? A couch to sleep on? No problem. Sleep on my couch. Not a problem. I really thrived on solving other people's problems. It was a great distraction for me from dealing with my own shit. And it was a lot easier for me to pour everything I had into someone else's issues than to learn how to set healthy boundaries and also confront my own problems, my own challenges. Does that sound familiar? And having said that, I'm not saying that you shouldn't help people, because I think that helping people is incredibly important and I will always do it whenever I can. Well, I think that you should reframe it slightly, and this is the way that I reframed it to really help myself and just ask the real question, which is, what are your limits? Or what are my limits? Are you giving from a full cup, or are you giving from an empty cup, a half full cup? Because that's going to make the biggest difference in how you're going to show up and help people with problems or challenges. If you don't know what that means, I mean, for me, giving from a full cup means being able to provide support and help and care for other people from a place of emotional, mental, and physical abundance. It's about ensuring that my own needs are met first before I can offer genuine and sustainable help without draining myself. And when your cup is full, you have the energy, you have the patience, you have the resources to give without feeling depleted, without feeling resentful or overwhelmed. And I think that it's an incredibly important self-care. And I think that it's the idea that self-care isn't selfish, but necessary to be your best self for others. And I just think that's really powerful. And it's something I've really, really been working on, because I was giving from a depleted cup most of the time, and that was building up resentment, it was building up issues. And working on that has been something that I feel like I will do for a long time, but I feel like I'm in a lot better position than where I was when I started to where I am now. And I'm able to give fully and more openly and more, just more, because of the fact I am taking care of myself first. It can be hard to assess if your cup is full or not, but I want to teach you some of the things that I've been doing and just talk them through so you can see how actually very simple it is. It's about taking the time to assess yourself. Are you helping because you genuinely have the capacity to, or are you using it as a distraction from your own needs? Very brutally honest question. It's really hard to sit in that discomfort and actually honestly answer that, because sometimes I don't want to answer that. But over time, I've learned to ask myself a very simple question. And that question is, am I taking care of myself? And every moment of the day, that question will have a different kind of answer. Some days you aren't eating enough vegetables, some days you aren't doing the exercise, some days you aren't taking enough time for yourself. And every moment in the day will also have a different answer. And before I try and step into helping others, I ask myself, am I taking care of myself? Do I have any unmet needs within myself? And if I do, then I go and I assess those needs. And that takes a lot of practice to generally figure out yourself and what it is that you need and what it is that you want. And I think that a good way to start is just having these check-ins. What do I need right now? Am I taking care of myself? And so I often not like, so say now I feel like I have an obligation to go somewhere. Someone has invited me somewhere and I feel like I have to go. But I'm feeling in myself, I don't want to go. Now, it could be that you're introverted and you don't like hanging out with people. So then you can ask yourself, am I taking care of myself? And within that, you can go, okay, I know that I need to expand my social circle. So taking care of myself right now would mean actually going to this event and showing up. And I don't have to stay for long, but I have to show up and try and make an active effort to make friends. That is taking care of myself right now. But on the other hand, you could have it that maybe you're a bit extroverted and you have been giving a lot of energy. So the thought of going to this event is actually going to drain you even more, and you don't have that extra capacity to give and show up and be your best self, because taking care of yourself right now would be staying at home on the couch, watching your favorite movie or something, eating popcorn. So it will mean different things to different people at different times of your life, different times of the day, but it's a really great way to start. And I think that you just have to start, even if you don't really know, because you kind of figure it out as you go, you know? Another way that I learned that I was giving too much is I started becoming aware of resentment or irritation. And if I found myself hanging out with someone a lot of the time, especially in dating, this is a really great way to assess if you feel like you're kind of you're giving too much in a relationship, is to notice if that resentment is starting to creep in. I feel like I'm cooking for him all the time. He never cooks for me. I feel that is resentment. It's kicking in. It's starting to surface, and that is showing you that a need is not being met for you, and you need to figure out how to meet that need first. So for that example, maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm cooking too much for him, so I need to take a step back. I actually think what I need to do is spend some more time by myself and go home and cook my own meals for myself and just enjoy that as best as I can. And it's quite powerful when you start using this with day-to-day activities, with work, with friends, in relationships. It really helps protect you, and it really helps enforce and build this incredible life for yourself, because you're giving from abundance rather than from a need to please. And I feel like reframing all of this, and this is really what I've been applying to my own life, so I know that it's working for me, is that when you reframe it this way, when you do say no to people, when you do say, I'm really sorry, I can't make this event, I understand it's more of saying no because I'm unable to give to the best of my abilities. And I would always rather show up as the best version of myself than to try and give a fraction or even half of myself to someone or something or a situation or something. And that has really been a great way to help keep my peace. And one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received was something very simple that's really helped me stop jumping into situations to fix them, because I love to fix. And it's really allowed me to learn how to take a step back and to still give without giving too much of myself. And the piece of advice is that when someone comes to you with a problem or they're upset or they're crying, is don't obviously immediately try to fix it, but instead go and make them a cup of tea. And it's so simple, but it's so effective because you don't need to ask them how they take the tea, you just need to make it. And there's also a high possibility that they won't even drink the tea, which is fine, or because maybe they don't like tea or whatever. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to show them that we're here to support them and we're here to help them. It also gives you that moment to take a step back without quickly jumping in to fix the problem. So if you're at work and someone comes up to you and says, I'm going to start complaining about something, and they're so very upset or they don't know what to do, just say, like, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Could you just give me 2 minutes and I will meet you in this room or whatever? Go and make them the cup of tea, bring the cup of tea to them, hand it to them, sit down and say, I'm here, I'm listening, tell me. And you actually create a space where they can talk about what's going on and you can simply listen. And it's such a small gesture, but it's incredibly powerful because instead of rushing in and fixing everyone's problems, you're offering your presence, your support, and your validation. And the space allows them to feel heard and empowered. So often, when people feel supported, they gain clarity and confidence to solve their own problems. And to be honest, aren't we all more likely to find the right solution when we're given the space to process it ourselves? This has really changed my approach on how I handle a lot of situations now, because I'm not jumping into things straight away, and as a result, I'm not overextending myself. This approach has really changed my life. It's really helped with relationships. It helps so much at work. Like, I can't explain to you how much it helps in a very professional situation when you shouldn't be taking on other people's problems, especially if you don't know them very well. And I've used this at work, I've used this with my friends, because it's really allowed me to not just jump into situations and overextend myself. Now I have the space to pause and to actually check in, like, am I taking care of myself? Because you can ask yourself that question when you're making the tea. And you can always bring them a cup of tea and say, I'm really sorry, I can't listen to you right now. I have all these things, or I'm not in the mental space to take on anything new at the moment. And you can come up with a plan to talk to them another time. And I also use this approach on myself when I'm feeling like I need support, when I'm feeling like I need some comfort. I do this a lot when I'm very sad and I just really need something to help warm me up, both physically and emotionally. And I tend to make myself a warm cup of milk with a bit of honey in. And it just really gives me the space to breathe and reassess and also just recharge. And it also just makes me feel good. And that's what we want. We want to be making sure that we feel good. I also have come to realize that by jumping in to solve people's problems, I was actually robbing them of the opportunity to grow. And I know this because it's something that happened to me in my life when during the pandemic, just before the pandemic, December 2019, I spent the month traveling around, and because I was working freelance, I spent a lot of my money and I thought I was going to get a job in January, but I didn't. I ended up traveling to South Africa with, again, no money. So I ended up borrowing from friends and family and went and traveled to South Africa with the expectation that I'd get a job in March. And we all know how that went in 2020. When I flew back, I realized I was in a really fucked position because I had no money. I needed to pay rent. Everything had shut down. And all my friends and family were now coming to me saying, I need that money that I lent you. And I remember just lying down on the carpets in my room, like literally face down, and just crying because I had no idea what I was going to do. I like, and because my friends and family had been lending me all this money prior, like I wasn't addressing or fixing the problem, which was I'm spending way more than I'm taking in. And they were robbing me of that opportunity to come up with more creative and more self-sufficient ways to get money so that I wasn't A, robbing them, and B, robbing myself of the opportunity for growth. And now that I was really in like the fucking deep end, I had to come up with a plan. And so I started educating myself on money. I learned a couple of courses. I managed to get a job at a coffee shop, and I negotiated with my landlord about lowering my rent and coming up with a payment plan to pay him back. And I learned how to pay off my debts. And I worked really hard at paying those debts off. And I did. And as a result of that, because I had learned that and I put all this problem solving skills into place, paid all my friends back, paid my landlord back, I ended up paying back my student loan sooner. So I paid less and I was debt free. I became debt free because of that and being able to learn those skills and how to break that down. That's what I mean is that when we jump in and just lend money and do this and offer the advice and whatever, we're really robbing people of the opportunity to grow. And it's something I've really been thinking about within my own life and how I show up in other people's lives. And that's why I think that just making a cup of tea is so powerful because you're showing that you're there and supportive, but you're not inserting yourself in the situation and telling them what you think they should do. And oftentimes people do come to us just to ask for advice, and that is okay too. But I also think most of the time people come to us just for someone to listen. It's a good way to look at it is, especially with the people pleasing and the overextending and people fixing and whatever you want to call it, you need to put on your own oxygen mask before you can help others. And that's why I think it's so important to be able to check in with yourself first and make sure that your cup is full, because you need to make sure your own oxygen mask is on before you can help others. And when you're making sure that your oxygen mask is on, you can show up and be so much better and so much more helpful and more positive. And sometimes you can be even more supportive without actually physically helping. And I saw a really great example of this within my own life where I was going through a really crazy period of my life and I was very upset and very overwhelmed. And it was during the time I was packing up my storage unit to move to Budapest. And I was riding the tube. And the specific day I was in a pretty good mood. I felt really good within myself. And I saw there was a woman and she was crying on the tube. And everyone in the carriage obviously ignored her. So I was sort of assessing this girl and just checking her body language. Like, do I feel a good vibe from it? Do I feel like it's forced? Do I feel like it's genuine? And I decided, I really want to live my life not having many regrets. And I rather regret doing something than regret not doing something. And so I went and sat next to her and I didn't want to draw attention to the fact that she was crying. So I wrote in a little book and I said, like, are you okay? And she kind of like nodded through tears, like, yeah, yeah. And I just made a joke and I was like, I'm really sorry, I don't have a tissue. And she kind of laughed at that. And then I wrote, do you want to go and get a coffee? And she took her headphones off and she said to me, like, she can't, she's going for an interview and she's just feeling very scared and very overwhelmed. So I asked her, can I give you a hug? And she said yes. And I just sat and I hugged the stranger on this tube. And I just held her and I just hugged her and she calmed down. And then I asked her, can I sit next to you until you get off at your stop? She said yes. And I took her hand and I held her hand and we sat in silence for the rest of the train journey, just holding her hands. And she stopped crying. And it seemed like she almost like started getting that confidence because she felt seen. She felt heard and she was scared for whatever interview she might be going to. And it felt really good for me to be, because I knew that I was stepping in and helping from a full cup rather than overextending, overexerting. And she got off and she told me thank you so much. And she looked much better when she left. And if she had this really important meeting, it was so nice to know that she was going in there with a bit more of a clear head than when she was a couple minutes ago when she was crying and a bit more overwhelmed and distraught, you know? And then, I'm not kidding, but maybe a week later, I was on a different train, but this time I was feeling so overwhelmed. I was crying a lot. I just had no extra mental space for anyone. Like, just giving that mental clarity and space to myself was hard enough. And I saw another girl crying on the tube, and I wanted to go over and help her. Like, the inherent giver in me wanted to go over and help her and just check in and see if she was okay. But I checked in with myself first and I said, am I taking care of myself? And I knew that in that moment, I didn't have that extra space to give to others. And I felt really guilty and bad for not being able to go over and go over and talk to this woman. But I also knew that I needed to take care of myself first because I wasn't able to show up and give to the best of my ability. And so I don't regret not going up to her because I knew that I wouldn't have been able to show up as the best version of myself. So it's important that we are taking care of ourselves and that we aren't just constantly trying to fix other people, because we do lose sight of our own needs. But when we learn to offer support without sacrificing ourselves, we can really create more meaningful connections. So next time someone comes to you with a problem, think of the cup of tea and give them the space to be heard and supported. And just don't forget to check in with yourself first. I thought I would give you a little treat this week. In the description below, I have included a link to the wallpaper that I use on my phone. It's a picture I've taken. I love film photography. And so it's a picture I've taken and it says, am I taking care of myself? And it's a great way to just have a gentle reminder whenever you pick up your phone to check in with yourself. And it's something that's really helped me. So if you want one, the link is in the description. Grab it, it's all yours. If the wallpaper doesn't fit your phone, send me a DM on Instagram, send me an email, and I'll change it so that it fits the make and model of your phone, so you can have your own little piece of me wherever you go. I'll see you next week. I love you.